Okay, council, we're going to reconvene here shortly. We'll have about 45 minutes. We'll need to break for a commissioners meeting. We are live, not Memorex, we're live. Yes, we're discussing as a council. Yes, you need a microphone. Mic up.
That one and then grab that one for Kyle.
Did you have a Motorola pen? Because if you did, I stole it.
Who has the Motorola pen? Claimed by Bobby. There's 2 blueberry muffins left for brunch. Okay. Chad has been given
Susan, you can grab the mic behind you.
It's kind of nice to sit there and get the best view of everything. Just make sure you guys are all doing what you're supposed to be doing. Promise I'll be nice.
Okay, we have a lot to discuss. We don't have to go in the order that's on the agenda or / itinerary, but we have not talked about, like we did last year, part-time pay. We had a spreadsheet last year what that would cost. I think Chad developed that. I'm not sure we have one updated. Didn't we go a minimum of $12.50 unless the department head chose otherwise?
We did.
And I think the recorder's office chose otherwise.
It was the assessor's office.
Assessor's office chose otherwise. So last year we bumped everybody. We had some people making $9 and something per hour part-time. And we said that should be set a minimum of $12.50, and we also said that would be something that might take years to do. I don't know if we can make a decision on that based on not having that information, what it would cost, but is there a feeling, an inclination for bumping that up again, given inflation?
I mean, I think it's certainly something to look at. The one that concerns me the most is the corrections officers at the jail, because I think they're at $14 and something an hour. Comparative to everything else, it's drastically different. I mean, but again, it all boils down to how much money we have and how much, because I think the raises last year to do the part-time were tens of thousands of dollars.
It was, because that was a major jump from like $9.50 to
Yeah.
$12.50.
So-
But we wouldn't be talking that much this year because we made a significant jump. And some, like you said, the correctional are 14, so they're already well above, but they are under,
They're
market.
above the 12, but they're well under the market.
Right.
It depends for, I mean, did we ask department heads if they budgeted, sorry,
Did we ask department heads that budgeted for part-time what rate they were assuming? And could they absorb an increase in part-time pay rate?
Okay. I didn't hear any department heads say that they raised that. If they raised it, it was because of number of hours, like Debbie.
But they may not have spent every
That we don't
penny of
know.
it, and it's possible that they could absorb an
That'd be in the report
increase.
Stephanie's running, what they've spent to date.
Yeah, it's what we spent as a county for the last two months,
Yeah.
June and July.
It's not
So,
broken down per
Like the
department.
20,000,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the sheriff's department, they actually dropped their part-time budget by $90,000.
But they were
Because they're
increased the number of
anticipating more-
officers.
More
Right.
full-time positions.
Right. Some departments wanted, well, 911 wanted,
they swapped out
They-
too, so that'll be less impactful.
they wouldn't need as many part-time if it had another full-time. Or
Right.
if the correctional has another 3 or 4 full-time.
Debbie, what rate did you guys use when you calculated your part-time? Did you use the 1250? You used 1250? Yeah. That auditor's new request for part-time, that part-time help we added it when
The
we replaced
20,000
the
was based on
full-time, yeah.
1250 for hours, okay.
Yeah.
Well, just keep that in the back of your mind. When we end up with a figure by this afternoon, we might want to circle around back to part-time. Do we want to raise it from 1250 to 13, or would we rather put it in raises for full-time?
So I actually support increasing it, because if we're going to encourage department heads to look for opportunities to use part-time instead of full-time, we have to make it possible for them to hire part-time people.
So when we figure out a number, are you thinking 13, 1350? What? And it's just a placeholder till we know what actual monies are.
I don't know.
You don't? Well, I make a suggestion, we put 13 as a placeholder, and then we see what the monies are. We'll see if we can do better or if we can do the 13. Kyle, you have
Find out how
a,
much that costs, and then
right.
we'll know.
It won't cost nearly as much as last year because we really took a bump last
Right.
year. It'd probably be very slight compared with last. You're excused. That went live. Okay, is that okay with everybody? Kyle, you want to speak?
It is. I was just thinking, from a uniformity standpoint, would it be good to have the 14 in there as a placeholder, with that being correction officer part-time pay?
Well, they're paid a lot more than that now. Well, not a lot more. They're paid 14. Departments can choose higher. We just set a base, minimum base. And that's what we're talking about, a minimum base countywide.
And when Chad said it concerned him, he meant it was too low. Did you catch? Okay, you knew that. Okay.
Okay,
Didn't turn it back on, sorry.
okay. My suggestion, let's just put a 13 until we know, and that would be the minimum we're striving for, and hopefully we can do better.
So just to catch everybody up, where we're at, before we discuss the commissioners, which we know of a couple things in there that need tweaked, we've cut the general fund budget, $517,809 is what my calculation is, which I've been verifying with Debbie and Bobby, so pretty much every time.
517 what?
517,809. So,
We're only just under 100 short still.
yeah, we're about $94,000. Yeah. So, and we know of the Meridian is a big chunk in the commissioners, and there's some,
Legal
that,
and
moving that,
Okay.
those two, well, along with that computer is, that's almost 400.
Okay, well, that's better than we were last year, as I look back to last year's
Yes.
deliberations. So I think we're going to be able to give decent raises, starting this afternoon. What I told Chad on Monday is the latest general fund that we got on 8.5 from Baker Tilly showed that we were going to be a 13.5% balance, and we wanted at least 15 to take, using proportionally what they have here, which is not updated with what we've done since the 5th. It would take $63,000 more to get that net cash flow back to 15%. So 63,000 needs to be taken out of what we just discussed just to keep us at 15%. And we said that was a floor because Baker Tilly said 15% minimum. And we started out in 2019 with less than 1% balance.
Did the August 5 change from the August 4?
Did it what?
Working off of the August 4th, did you mean 4 or 5?
I have August 5.
I want August 5 too then.
Just needs to be copied. That just corrected, I think, the issue with the 1173 and the 1176, Debbie said, was the numerical miscalculation on Baker Tilly's part. And so we weren't nearly as bad as we thought in those two highway budgets. They had plugged something in.
You can give it either, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I just wrote in what the account was at the end because they didn't have lines, and sometimes I drop down a line. So we need 63,000 more to leave, as of 8/5, to leave 15%, which was our goal. Is people on board with that? We want to leave at least a 15% balance at their recommendation.
So we need 63,000 more in.
From 8/5, but they haven't updated any of the
I'd prefer
spreadsheets.
I'd prefer to balance than to leave the 15%, but
Okay,
I'm definitely
Yeah,
on
I'm
board
kind
with-
of the mindset, because I think we're gonna need that 68,000 if we're gonna give raises. I think that makes a big difference to raises.
it does.
That's, you know,
You're of which mindset?
that's 30
Just leave
people,
15%?
30 people's raises.
So
That's
you're
a
of the
lot.
mindset to just leave 15%, you're saying?
No, I'm in the mindset to not try to get to 15%. The
Okay.
13 point is way better than most are, and
Okay.
we're still, that's within,
that's
that's within a rounding error number. I think if we can balance the budget, we should try to utilize the funds over the balance to use raises.
I'm not opposed. It just would take 63 to be at 15, but if the council thinks we are good at 13.6, I think
I mean, considering a few years ago, the county was at 0.
So
we
you would decrease our balance to give raises?
No,
It'd
I
be
would
the same
just
as
balance
here.
the budget
It'd be the same as
and
that.
meet the 611,000 to balance the budget, and then if we have
Anything
3 or 4,
extra,
any
you're
of the
saying
extra
for
take
raises.
for
Okay.
raises in lieu of balking the current
Agreed.
balance.
Yeah, we don't need to add. to
sounds good.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer.
Raised our percent down to
It's
No, our percent would
13.6.
still be 13.6.
It'd be 13.6,
Which is still well over $2 million.
which is
and-
13%.
And
that we
especially
didn't
with the
have when we
funds.
started.
say 15.
Okay,
I know.
we'll discuss that when we get to that point. So that's not much difference when we're talking about well, anyway, we're talking about a $15 million general fund. 63,000 is less than 0.5%, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, part-time, we put a floor of $13 an hour for now. Longevity, we have a letter, Susan, you alluded to that, from Judge Crane. And it's just saying they have the money now to do the matrix, and I throw that out there because whether we do or don't is going to depend on, it's going to make a little bit of a difference. But you've got the letter, so
So I have some numbers for part-time if we can jump into
Oh.
that next.
okay, we haven't really dived into the matrix, so go ahead.
So the question, so basically, Debbie just handed me the report for 2 months worth of part-time. It's 95 employees across the county, which is about 248,000. So if you take that
How much
times
again?
248,000. So if you take that times the 6, you get about $1.49 million that we pay out in part-time. So if you increase that, the 1.49, and I think it was about, what did you say, 50 cents increase or so?
1250 to 13.
To 13, that's about a 4% roughly. So if you take that times 4%, you know, we're gonna add, it would cost right at $60,000 to add the raises to all the department across the
So
board.
that would be paid for if we left the 13.6%.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Is it generally pretty consistent what we spend on part-time each month?
so you would be looking at I mean, this is a very rough estimate. We could go through and try to figure every single person, every single number, but a good rough estimate would be around $60,000.
So 4%, and I hope that's what we're striving for and be able to do countywide. We'll see, by this afternoon, we may have a better idea. So it doesn't seem unreasonable.
No. Total payroll, just full-time payroll. Can you do that? So, but this has everything, not just general. Can you do just general? No, full-time. I don't know,
She's thinking.
because I think our payroll's way more than, well, I could figure it out. Hang on, I have that in a spreadsheet. Kenan did.
What do you mean, way more than what? I was just looking at general fund.
Our current payroll.
Were we going to do anything else with this, or we set this?
I really talked about it because she brought in she brought in the part-time information, and we haven't really moved into that. Are there any thoughts? Basically, what I get from this August 5th letter from probation is that Susan and Kit said they had the money now, but everything else we've talked about takes effect January 1. So, thoughts?
I mean, we did the highway department in the middle of the year, that raise, so I'm good with it, actually.
Other thoughts?
If they have the money already, then I don't think
Say
there's
they've
any
got it.
downside to it. I know that's something that when Susan and I met, that was something that was, was number one on her list of things that would be good for her department. I know they have
It
their
goes back
matrix.
to morale.
Back to morale,
Why
yeah.
can't I pronounce
I think we say
morale?
yes as much as possible right now, if it makes sense to say yes right now. This is my philosophy.
Okay. Opposing view? Additional views? You said they have the money.
That's what the
They're
letter
gonna use the
indicates.
same
They've got
thing
the,
that they are going to use in the future, too. I mean,
They're just upping
that's
it.
where they got it in the future. They took it from part-time mostly,
So
so.
they're talking about 5 months, whatever, or 4 months, September through December, because it'll take a while to work through payroll.
I have a question, and I'm not saying that probation doesn't deserve that, I want that. What happens if you give that probation with no money for raises? And you've given them their raise, plus the longevity, but no other employee raises?
There'll be
feel like
monies
we're
for other
definitely
raises.
Going to give raises. And so maybe we don't do this if we don't approve the raises.
Yeah, I don't think there's a final decision. It just seems like there's a penchant to
If we have to do this in a public meeting.
do this
right?
anyway.
So, yeah.
I just don't hear any opposition. So this is a preview of August 25th, possibly.
We'll
okay.
know by our meeting if we're going to do raises.
I hope we know by Monday. I hope by Monday we know exactly how much we can give for raises. Okay, jail matrix is going to be a major topic. I know Chad did some initial calculations. I don't know if I wrote those down. I don't think I did. You want to talk any more about that, Chad, since you were doing some calculations, or are you on another calculation?
I think we need to decide whether we want to address matrix, whether we want to address raises, or if we want to try to come up with a hybrid. Because honestly, I don't think we can do both. Because we're not going to have that much money. So I think as a committee, we need to decide whether we are leaning towards more pay or whether we're leaning towards more addressing longevity in the matrix. Because if we gave them, I don't know that we have the money to do both. And
Talking about just jail, right? We're not
well,
talking
but
countywide.
where do you, we're jail, then you're rolling 911 into it, and then, then you've got all the court officers in it, and then it's a snowball effect.
Yeah, it's still poll. We're extending the poll.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be countywide. I mean, we can't do that countywide, because what did you say, it'd be $1 million?
Okay, tell me again exactly how longevity and exactly how the matrix works. The longevity is 200 a year, starting on year 3.
It's staggered. It's not every,
Pays year 3, but after 2 years, you qualify for it, right? Okay, so if you qualify for it in your second year, then you get paid that following November, and then it stretches to
And it maxes at $1,000.
$1,000, and that's at 10 years.
and
At
that's,
10 years.
And
Yes,
that's
but the matrix
every
does
year.
not max.
Okay.
So there are people on the matrix that are getting paid $8,000.
Yeah,
I think it's 10 and a.
it doesn't increase anymore.
15, it's 15 years.
Is it 15
goes
years?
to 1,000. I think it's 15 years.
1,000 over 15 years.
Anything over
Yeah. Uh-huh.
here is what he wants that for January through
more for Chad to calculate and advise.
We'll wait.
And matrix is 250.
A year?
Okay, so
That's why he said it, yeah.
general fund is 3,863,000. That's for how many months?
6.
6 months.
Repeat that figure.
3,864,000. So if you double that,
7 million.
7, yeah,
Five.
what can? $7,700,000, give or take, 7.7 million. So if you take that times 3, just the general fund alone would be $210,000 at 3%. If you do 4%, you're $280,000, which is about what we're at.
Repeat
But
that.
it's not
200 what?
280,000 at 1%, 210,000 at 3%. But,
Would this include
Plus.
the,
well, it'd be a little more than that, but,
benefits, the
no, it doesn't include benefits, social
Still
security, no,
not.
that's
This
just a
is
raw
just- okay.
number.
You said 280 at 3?
Anybody, if you guys want me to make you a copy of that,
No.
you want a copy of that?
Yeah, makes sense. I'd make at least, you still have down, you said 280,000 for a 3% increase raise?
If you do it all, it's about $308,000 and then you'd have to add the bennies on top of it. So 308,000 for 4% times,
You're using 20?
1.19. So $380,000 with perf and everything's $452,000 is what you're looking at.
4%.
At 4%.
Did you use a 20% factor for fringe benefits?
I used a 1.9, 19%.
Okay.
By the time you add perf, social security, everything's right at 19%.
452.
I don't understand, Chad. Was it 308 or 380, your base?
Well, so,
At 4%, because add 20% to 308, and that's going to be more like 370,000.
it's 380 at 4%.
380.
That's 380.
I thought you said 308. That makes-
380, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then 452 is at 19% for fringe benefits. How do you factor in
You're getting
insurance?
a
Is
higher
it-
number than I'm getting, so,
Yeah, me too.
I mean, are you sure you're right?
$7.7
You're
million.
probably right, but-
$7,700,000 times 0.04 equals 308,000.
Yeah, okay, that's what I
How do
got.
they get
The
380?
first time,
So it's
okay.
368 maybe.
370.
Multiply times.
Yeah, in that ballpark.
So that's 366,520.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. Okay,
That sounds better,
that's better.
because I think we're there, or close to it. We'll know after
That is
commission.
if we did an across-the-board raise, but we,
4% across the board in the general fund, and then the other funds would have to fund themselves, which I think I'm good with. I
When,
think they should.
when I looked at mine last night, Chad, 4% was my average across the board, but that wasn't, that was about average.
it's probably my average too, because we
It
come
is.
in really close,
We're-
but there's some that only got $500 and there's some that
Very-
got $3,500.
Very few
Yeah.
had 5, like us, because we're part-time.
Yeah.
Coroner, because part-time,
Yeah.
but very few got 5. A lot of them got a lot more.
So, and when you, what did your proposal cost? So this is 368 to give 4% to everyone.
This is the raw numbers before the increase was $295,000 before, so it's right at that
That's
number.
right at the same number.
Yeah.
Said that that total has payouts and employees that are no longer here as well on it, but there's no way to separate that.
Yeah, okay. So it's rough,
Yeah, it's just a complete rough estimate.
yeah. And what did yours cost, Ken, and are you looking?
Mine cost 386, and with 20% was 463. But 386 was the base.
That was your base number, so that's a little higher.
Is that all of them or just the general?
Well, I took out, obviously, things like community corrections that doesn't come out of ours. No, that's,
Does
I
it
think
include the
highway
park, the
department
health
should pay
department, the
for
highway
theirs. I think the
department?
park
Yes.
should pay for theirs. I think
mine,
the health
mine included health,
Okay,
Park.
so if I included all of those on
Highway.
mine, it's 333,000.
okay, it's really close.
Yeah, he's about 50,000 higher.
Because the reason I think that we short the general fund employees' raises is because we pay for everyone's raises out of the general fund maybe. And so I think that each fund should fund their own raises, because then when they come to us and say, I have money to do this, I mean, they
Yeah.
should be funding their own raises.
Well, that's the way I did it in mine, was
Okay.
every fund paid for their own raises. It's broken out
Okay. I
separately.
included it, so if I took those out, we would be so close,
Yeah.
it would not
exciting.
even.
Yeah, because the highway department for me was minimal raises, and I think you gave them a little bit. I think I was at 500 on most employees except for
And
a couple of the admin positions.
I gave him 750 because we're the lowest of the 9 counties, and Indiana at 40 to 50,000. We're number 9 out of 9 counties on highway. I gave them $250 more, and they'd still be the lowest of the 9 counties on highway. So, that's the only difference. Our differences are,
It gives us an idea.
I'd probably give them to
350
you as an
400,000.
objective third party and split the difference. They're so close, it's
Right.
like
I think-
growing straws.
I think the biggest difference is I did weigh the sheriff's department a little higher than I think you did. I think I was at
I maxed.
3,000, you were at 25.
I maxed everybody at 25, so it'd give
Yeah.
people that are lower,
And what I was trying to accomplish was to get them to the pay where the city was. That's why I went a little further.
right, and we'll never meet the city. Number one, they're a union. Number two, they've maxed out their tax base.
Yeah.
And number three, they're trying to find money now to pay for their,
So Chad's
decisions.
original statement was, do we want to do raises or matrix? So now we circle back and say, I mean, if we get together this 350 or 400,000, that's probably all we're going to find, I think.
My feeling on what do we address, my gut is that it's raises. That's what probably employees would
Helps
want to
us
hear
hire.
first.
Hopefully.
I would say,
Potentially.
we can't do matrix for everybody, so I'd say raises needs to be the priority.
See, and I agree. I think raises have to take a priority
I
because
think right now they're
That's
so low
where
that they
we're-
have to.
But it's worth noting that the.
raises will impact everyone. And even as
Right.
Rebecca's shown and others have shown, if we did the matrix, even for those few, it's a minimal amount of money, so the impact is not that great versus the raise, but we can't do that across the board.
The only benefit to a matrix is that we don't go through this every year.
And eventually,
Or we need to get there eventually because it helps us budget for it. We know we need X increase each year to cover our matrix obligations.
Organizations that use a matrix or a salary scale, they don't go through this. They just say, you're going to
Yeah,
get
it's
a
a
2%
commitment.
increase, and it's there. It's there listed, year one, you get this, year two, you get this, 4, 5, it tops off at 20 years. But you just put that 2% increase on that salary matrix, it's done. Our discussion would be one day after we heard the departments. You're right. So I hear 2 people say raises is the priority, 3 people, because I agree, 4 people. I hear a head shake.
I think raises, and then I think, next year we look at it again and
Lucky
decide.
you, 144 deer.
Yeah. To rephrase, I think, what I'm hearing and what Chad said was raises, but we have to take a look at the longevity, the part-time, everything else that figures into the matrix for the future. I mean, that they're just linked necessarily to the budget going forward,
Right.
right?
Just to build on that, I'll use the mic. I'm sorry, I haven't been. I mean, I think we've all set an expectation at this point that we're going to do our darndest to get raises, and our department heads are expecting as much as we can deliver, and, that comes with asterisks, but there's a lot we need to look at. I mean, I feel like this is something we're going to need to work on for the next year, everything.
Probably
It's-
3 years.
For several years, every extra we get needs to go back to our employees because they've not been brought up to where they've been supposed to be.
We don't like the classification system very much. We are, I think, finding issues with Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy. There's longevity is an issue, sick pay. I mean, there's just so much we really probably, the whole thing probably needs to be examined and deconstructed.
Right, and a lot of that's on the commissioners. I mean, anything with personnel, the longevity is on them, the whole job classification system is on them, and we just keep the channels of communication, what we're talking about, and hopefully we're on the same page. But we have emphasized raises this year. We've got an inflation rate of 9.1, and probably the best conceivable we can do, because revenues went up 3%, is maybe give them close to half of that 9%. If we could get 4.5, which I'm not saying we can.
I think also that if we're going to look at what inflation is right now, we have to take that into consideration. We also have to look at what the projections are in the future. And the studies I've read show that if things track as the experts say they should, that by the end of 23, it should shrink back down to around that 3% level.
We can
So
only hope.
that's I mean, we have to look at both sides of the spectrum.
Sure.
We're in the worst case. Here's the best case. What's that?
I don't think the reports I'm reading say that wages are not going to fall. This, the massive increases we've had are going to shrink.
Right.
That's what I'm seeing. So I don't think wages will ever fall back at this point.
You were
So I
speaking
think
about inflation.
Yeah.
inflation. But
Right.
I'm working.
I hope you're right. I hope those projections
Oh,
are
I
right.
hope so as well.
It's optimistic.
It was a congressional budget office that put that together.
Okay.
Right.
So,
And we've always known this was going to be our lean year. We've known for 2 years this was going to be our hardest year. So I'm hoping that next year we have a lot more to celebrate.
all right, so I just ran some quick numbers, and with those three things that we talked about in the commissioner's budget, if we balance the budget with the 611,000, we have roughly $340,000 at this point to deal with.
So that's not the 4% if we do part-time.
That's not the 4%.
Nope.
And the part-time, remember the part-time, we still have to add about 8% to that, because we do have to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes on it. We don't have to pay PERF, but we do have to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes on the part-time. So,
Okay.
that's, that adds another chunk of money to that, so, yeah, I mean, realistically.
We're at 3%, but we're not at 4.
And that's in the general fund. That's not, so keep in mind that 60,000, a lot of that's the health department and some of those other departments that would accommodate for that. So the general fund monies is probably, what, half, maybe?
Of
Is a
part-time.
rough guess of that part-time, would you guess it was roughly half? So you're looking at $35,000 maybe that you would have to add in there for part-time from general.
Okay.
So if you take that out, we're looking at roughly $300,000 left. You take the 20% back from that, we're talking $260 in raises, is what we're looking at.
Okay.
We're talking $250, $260 is, if we stretched, is what we're talking total that we would have to utilize for raises
Out of the general.
out of the general.
And we don't just have raises, we have mostly raises, we have some instances where job responsibility shifted.
So that is,
That's
so
separate.
this is separate because we've got to talk, so if we don't do the raises that Debbie has asked for and make her positions SO, then all of a sudden 40,000 of that 260 gets eaten up because we throw that other position back in there. So now we have 220 to give raises. But if we give her raises were
Or more.
that, yeah, so her raises will take some of those out too. So that, her raises were $20-some thousand. Even though they were washed, it was still, they'd have to be put back in.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, so we're dealing between 220 and 260, depending on what we do with the auditor's office. Unless we find more to cut in the budget. So I don't know that we can come up with either one of Ken and I's numbers at this point.
Really fast, I think, so there was another sheet that I didn't see that was, he was taking out
could afford his raises, though. He's better than balanced.
If I were to back out the health and the highway, which I included in that number I gave you, that would take $28,000 off of what I gave you on mine. That's just those two departments. I already excluded community corrections because it's by a grant. And if I took out 911, it'd be over 30,000 cut from what I said, so.
What would you say again?
Of the 386 I gave you, you could take out 32,000, so it'd be more like 352.
You were at 386, I'm at 333 with everybody.
then
And
the
it's
4%
very
number
close.
was 368.
It'd be close to 350. We're so close, like I
Yeah,
said.
we're-
I'd
we're
give it to
very,
Su-
very close.
I'd give it to Susan to reconcile the differences. We don't need to have a lawyer,
I'm gonna need to have
a divorce lawyer, we won't need it.
I don't know a good one, does anybody? Thankfully, I don't need one.
Thankfully. Okay. I think we opted for raises over matrix. We talked earlier, the three of us, about longevity, but it goes on for 15 years. We can't afford that in the raises we're talking about this year. Remember, we talked about instead of 200, 400, raising it to, I don't know, 300, 600. It would take away from raises, so if our emphasis is on raises, then we need to probably move that discussion to the future.
The only thing that I would say about probation's longevity is she found it in her own budget to do
Found
it.
it in our budget.
And that's,
And that's kind of been our.
that's been our
the
mantra. I
precedent
mean,
that
yeah.
we've been setting.
I mean, same with Debbie, and
She
that's,
found it in her
she found
budget,
it in her budget. So, I mean, I know I tried to do this last year for Jenny and
I know.
everything, and everybody made me hit the brakes then. I think
You should have got that money then. too.
I think she should have too. So, but now instead it got totally
Otherwise, it just
enveloped,
goes-
yeah.
the
It just
general
went
fund
straight
eats
into
it
the
back
general
up.
fund instead of her taking the benefit, because she's also cut at least two. She's cut two, and she switched one from a first deputy to a clerk, I think, which saved 10 or 12,000. Yeah, but I mean, she's done the same thing. Jenny in the clerk's office. She cut two actual positions, and then she also switched one that used to be a first. I think they used to have another site or something, and then they have to. So they had a separate site, which caused them to have another first deputy to be the supervisor. But she did away with that position and made it a clerk, remember? Which saved $12,000+, if I remember right,
They got a plaque.
to that department. So, yeah, I think they got a tray of cookies or something, didn't they, Peg?
Peg gave them a tray of cookies for the savings, and we gave them a plaque for when we
Yeah.
were desperate and were down with no balance.
Yes.
They cut the most from their budget, them in voting. So they got cookies and a plaque.
But it was because of the job classification that we did not give them that money back. And that's very unfortunate,
Yeah, because I tried to make that.
because that
And
is
they-
something
I got
that
shut
we would
down.
want to encourage a department to do, is look for ways
I-
to, especially when their people are underpaid.
I think Debbie's department deserves a plaque and cookies.
Well, and that's also what Ken and I sidebar was a minute ago. If we do decide to allow Debbie's department to do what she's recommended, I don't know that the other department heads really understand that's on the table. And
But next year,
So
year
I-
they will know.
so I don't know if she's
Bill
willing.
might be able to do that also.
We're talking about cross-training people so that
No,
they
we're
can-
talking about if they terminate a position, taking that pay and spreading it out over the current employees versus,
And they can use some of it for part-time.
yeah. And so, I know Kenan says could cause us to totally derail, but I think we have to at least
We have to
see
consider.
if anyone else is interested.
I didn't
You
use
said
that term.
I think,
I said it opened up a can of worms because we'd be talking about this through every
What?
department. We'd have a
Yeah.
sit-down with every
What
department.
we can't do is just keep cutting people and never raise wages.
Right.
That's what we can't keep doing. But, but people are often willing to do more work for more money.
Right.
I would.
Do
I'm
not
always willing
disagree
to
with
be more
anything any of you said.
All I'm saying is if we put it out, I think if we decide to allow the auditor's office to do it, I think we have to give every department that opportunity. And if that means we have to not have our budget hearing at the end of the month,
So you're
we don't
saying-
have to have it in until October anyway.
So how do we communicate that to our department heads and elected officials?
Jenny's out, Jody's out, Bill's here, but I mean, I think we have to have the auditor's office send out an email or something.
If we approve that.
If we decide to go down, if we decide
Everything we're
we're going to
talking
opt
about
this. But we
brainstorming
don't actually
if
have to have
possible.
this to DLGF until October, correct? So if we waited, because I know like Delaware County's not even having their meetings till
Debbie
September.
was pushing for August. She's not here. She can give the rationale. She was really pushing. She wanted it August, but this, yeah.
And the
I
raises
get
were
it, but if you guys want the raises you want, then we may not be able to get it done by then, is the problem.
The word that's most important here is if, and we haven't decided that if yet.
So here's the flip side of it. Other departments may miss out on that opportunity this year, but it is on the board for next year. I mean, they came to us with it in time. Other departments didn't, but it's still an option on the table for next year.
Yeah, but I don't know that they knew that they had that option.
They
She
probably,
didn't either. She doesn't know that we're going to do it, right?
we
No,
still-
she didn't,
We
but-
still don't.
Right.
She's much more intimately involved and would be able to understand the
Okay.
budget differently.
This
So-
is all ifs.
Okay.
But
Again.
it's pro and con. This afternoon, we need to talk about it
Okay.
more fully, and we'll have a carryover till Monday, it does look like. EIRPC, then we'll have to leave. Pros and cons on being a member. I said on, what's today, Monday, that if Newcastle, like last year, they were leaning towards not paying their 33% or whatever it is, half, that we consider, is the benefit worth the?
I will say this, I know I mentioned the other day that I had not received any emails, and that was true. I literally had never received an email from Jeff Plaster, but I've worked on subcommittees with the IRPC on broadband. I've since been added to the email list, and I've gotten a couple, so they exist. I really didn't know what I was missing, but having said all that, I can't really speak to our investment in that and the return on investment because I don't know what I've been missing. Chad could speak better to it because he's been on it for a few years and also he's been getting the updates. So
My suggestion, if we're going to arm wrestle whether or not Newcastle pays, if they don't, we shouldn't. It's not worth the full amount.
is it worth talking to Corey and Penny about?
You know how Corey feels about it?
Corey is for it. And Penny's here.
I'm going to agree with Kenan. If, you
Mark
know,
that down.
if the city is not, yeah, it's a rare occasion, but occasionally.
That needs to be in the minutes.
If the city's not going to send theirs over, then I'd say we opt out. At this point, I'm not seeing, with Jeff leaving and that everything totally changing, I'm just not sure I see.
I think they're talking about that position going to part-time, so that
Yeah.
we may not have the interactions.
It's part-time now.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, it's part-time. They're actually talking about taking it to full-time,
Okay.
but it's part-time now. But yeah,
Anybody else have an opinion on that?
I would be, yeah, Peg's never been for. I'd be willing to opt out given our current financial
That'd be
situation.
19,000.
That's
I-
several
I'm against
more
that. I think
raises.
get out of it.
I'm sort of neutral, but I think Chad might be the best since he's been the closest connected to answer. So if he says, get out.
You've been our,
Yeah.
he's been our rep since this year, right? Until this year, okay. Commissioners meeting, we'll be back here
What
at
time?
12:15 is the time we have for the commissioner sit-down, budget sit-down. And I'll leave the
You're our
two.
last group to talk to.
We're totally talking raises after commissioners, because we'll know exactly what monies we have, pending some of the things we were just talking about.
Can I leave my, the commissioners are having a meeting?
Oh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you guys go to lunch last week? Yeah, we went down.